In the mid-14th century, a dark shadow crept across the European continent, marking the beginning of the most devastating pandemic in human history. The air was thick with a silence that spoke of abandoned homes and forgotten lives, as smoke rose faintly from a few remaining chimneys. While the world above remained unaware, the true architects of this misery moved through the shadows of damp alleys and rotting The Black Death was not a singular event, but a relentless wave that would eventually claim millions of lives across 3 continents. The plague's journey began far to the east, traveling along the ancient veins of global commerce known as the Silk Road. Merchant ships, laden with spices and silks, unknowingly carried a stowaway more precious and deadly than any cargo they held. By the time these vessels reached the ports of Sicily, the crew members were already showing the telltale signs of a horrific, unrecognizable sickness. The true biological engine of the plague was the tiny flea, living within the fur of rats that thrived in the squalor of the era. For the common people, the arrival of the pestilence meant a sudden descent into a waking nightmare from which there was no waking. Families watched helplessly as their loved ones succumbed within days, their bodies marked by the painful swellings that gave the bubonic plague its name. As the death toll mounted, the traditional rites of burial were abandoned, replaced by the grim necessity of mass graves outside the city walls. The cry of "Bring out your dead" echoed through the streets of London and Paris, as carts overflowed with the victims of the invisible killer. Neighbors turned against neighbors, bolting their doors in a desperate, often futile attempt to keep the plague from crossing their thresholds. Medieval medicine was ill-equipped to handle the crises. Doctors wore bird-like masks, believing sweet-smelling herbs could protect them from miasma or bad air. With no scientific understanding of bacteria, people turned to faith and superstition. Groups of flagellants marched through towns, seeking divine mercy through penance. Baskets of dried flowers, bottles of vinegar, and exotic spices were sold as cures, but they offered nothing more than a false sense of security. After years of terror, the sun finally began to break through the metaphorical and literal clouds that had hung over the world. The Black Death had permanently altered the social fabric, leading to higher wages for survivors and the slow dismantling of the feudal system. The legacy of the plague remains with us today, reflected in our modern understanding of public health and the resilience of the human spirit.